Dudes to Dads is a podcast to help men understand and navigate the transition of being a single dude into a family man. How do we make sense of it all? Well, we probably won't be able to, but let's go ahead and have some fun trying. And we're back.
We are back.
I'm Jason Kreidman.
I'm Alan Bush.
And this is Dudes to Dads. Alan, what's happening this week?
Things are great this week.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Energized, ready to go?
Ready to go. I'm doing push-ups and just preparing for this interview.
So we don't actually often have guests in our, let's call it studio, where we record.
Sure.
But when we have a chance to, we certainly enjoy that. And this is certainly a special treat. So today's topic is sports parenting.
Yeah.
Okay. I have with us Terry Liskevych. Terry, hello. How are you?
Hi. Hello, both of you. Glad to be here.
So
coming
I'll
up.
give you a little bit of background on Terry. I want to talk about some of his history, what he's seen, what he's experienced, and of course, as it relates to sports parenting and coaching and having parents involved. And then, of course, we're going to get to some tips. There's all kinds of topics that I want to cover. I only have somebody for so much time, but I want to get so much information in one small time. So let's kind of start out. I will give you just some tidbits on the background, and then I want to hear from Terry himself. So he's the CEO and president of The Art of Coaching, and we'll talk a little bit about what that is. It is a resource online for coaches. It's amazing. They're going to do multiple sports. They've done a couple sports already. I've seen this thing grow as I've kept tabs, if you will, on what he's been doing. So that's really interesting. Former collegiate volleyball coach. He coached the Ohio State men's team, University of the Pacific women's team, Oregon State. Now, here's the thing. Volleyball has Final Four as well.
Yeah.
He's taken 7. He's been there 7 times.
Wow.
Okay. So that's a pretty good stat.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Coach of the year, Pac-12 coach of the year. He's done a couple things. The other thing, now we go to a different level. He was the U.S. women's national and Olympic coach for 12 years. Okay. So that's a pretty decent thing.
Good resume.
Also international coach of the year. So Terry, you've been doing this for a long time, I guess. A decent amount.
I have too long, probably.
And so now the reason he's on here as well is not only has he dealt with so many parents, but he is a parent himself.
Right.
His children both, they're now 2 adult children, have played youth sports, played collegiate sports. They very experienced as well. So he's had the whole gamut of sort of being the parent and watching them play sports, to being an athlete yourself, and then to going on and dealing with tons of parents, both on a college level, professional level, everything. So I think we're in for a good treat. So Terry, hello, welcome again.
Thank you, and a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So tell me a little just first. The idea of just getting into coaching. You were an athlete yourself. You were involved in sports. How did you decide, hey, because I think you played more than one sport. How did you decide, hey, I want to be a...
Well, I'm an immigrant, and my parents came here when I was 3, and they left the Ukraine and lived in Germany during World War II. I was born in a displaced persons camp in Germany. We came here in 1951 and moved to Chicago, the Ukrainian village, a 10 by 10 square block area in Chicago. Mm-hmm. And the sports I played were table tennis, soccer. I wanted to play basketball, football, and baseball, and I was kind of the king of the ghetto, the sport kid, But I started playing volleyball at age 17 because a lot of my soccer friends said I ought to go play volleyball, and then I really got into it. I still was playing semi-pro soccer and college soccer, but then gave kind of everything up for volleyball. I was a pre-med, went to medical school, was there for a year, and I quit to play volleyball. So you could imagine.
Wow. You were into volleyball.
So I played on the club team that the Olympic coach coached, Jim Coleman, the 68 Olympic coach, and didn't make the national team, tried out several times, and then became his assistant in a college, George Williams in Chicago. Got my master's, coached men. We won the NAIA championship, and then I went and was the coach at Ohio State and took them to 2 Final Fours. Fours, and then went to Pacific, a program that was 1-year-old, Division III, to Division I juggernaut. We went to 5 Final Fours, lost in the semis twice, 15-13 in the fifth.
At least you forgot about that.
We're in the national championship and lost it to USC in 1980. And then as I went off to the national team, the person who replaced me, John Dunning, who just retired from Stanford, who started the art of coaching with me, John replaced me at Pacific, never having coached in college, and won 2 national championships the first 2 years.
So you had prepped him.
I prepped him.
Yeah, you were getting everyone
John
ready.
owes me.
Right.
John owes me. So then from there, I coached the Olympics for 12 years.
Wow.
Grew it from, they were a great team in '84, and everybody retired.
This was the women's team?
The women's
national
team, and then they won the silver medal in '84. But we really struggled in the beginning, the first 2 years. But by 1994, 95, we were the number 1 team in the world. And so we won a bronze in '92. Again, lost a tough 5-game semi to Cuba, who won the gold medal. And then in Atlanta, we lost to Cuba in the quarterfinals, and they won the gold medal. So took
a little bit of history
but then took 9 years off and started a couple of companies. And I think, Jason, that's where we met, where I had Arc Digital Technologies and I had Paragon Marketing and then Total Sports, which were marketing companies. And then when my kids went off to college, my son Mark to the University of Chicago, and then when Krista went off to Wisconsin, I said, hey,
they were soccer players,
They were soccer players. They played all sports, but they played tennis. Mark played tennis. He played soccer. He played volleyball, but Krista played volleyball and soccer.
So even that question right there, how was it, it just came up for me, is you were very successful at that point as a coach with your children playing those sports. Did you have to consciously back off, or were you?
I did back off, and their mom Nancy was an All-American volleyball player, so we were very
kind of a sports family,
conscientious and not pushing our kids into volleyball. But soccer is what they really gravitated toward. And I had played soccer, but what I started seeing, and this is the landscape starting like in 1992 on, when my kids started playing soccer, early 90s, I'd watch these parents and I'd go, what is going on? Right. They're nuts. They're and that's what we'll get into. So my son always said to me, he appreciated that we used to, my wife and I sat 40 yards away half the time and watched and didn't get involved. So
you kind of knew already that, you had this you were you were very conscious about how you were dealing with it.
It was really different for me because my mom worked 2 jobs, and so they never really had a chance to come see me play. Yeah. And sport was avocation when we were in the Ukrainian village in Chicago. Everybody was going to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer.
Right.
And I think that to me, and having played tennis at a high level, I did, and soccer, and I could have gone to college and had scholarships for both, I would never have even considered that because I was going to be a doctor.
Got it.
So I never really thought about that whole dynamic until I finally got into coaching and saw, oh my gosh, and then youth sport really began in the mid 70s, early 80s, and then now it's a train wreck, and it's the genie's out of the bottle, and we're not getting the genie back.
Got it. So what age, because this is one of the questions I had, is, appropriateness, if you will, for getting kids into sports and competitive sports, essentially. How old do you recall, your children were when you sort of introduced them and got them into sports? And then with the same question is, one thing of getting them into sports, the second is recognizing, saying, hey, maybe we're going to be a little bit more competitive about it.
Well, we're fortunate. We live in the same neighborhood, and that neighborhood with the double cul-de-sac had 16 kids. And those 16 kids not only had a swimming pool, they had a basketball hoop, they rollerbladed, played roller hockey, went and...
That's what it was about when you were
their skateboards, took their bikes. And I think that as hard as it is now in anywhere, but particularly in California, because there's not a lot of double cul-de-sacs, that it was a safe environment for them to play on their own. And I think this is the key element, unstructured play at a young age, where there are no adults.
Right.
And the kids have to figure out the rules, and the kids have to figure out.
So what age do you think it is okay?
Well, I think by the time they now get to be, 6, 7, they may play a little bit of rec, whether it be, t-ball, or they'll play soccer, or they'll have some swimming lessons and so forth. But I think there's a danger that's been applied now to youth sports that kids have begun to play structured, adult, supervised, organized games at age 5 and 6.
So that's too early.
I think it's too early. I think there's too much, structure.
It should just be fun.
It should be fun, and it should, kids at a young age don't even necessarily know what the score is. They're thinking of where they're going to have ice cream after. and that's what it should be. Right. I think the parents, I have a good friend who was coaching his son in t-ball. And this was like the third week, and some of the parents in the stands were saying, your batting order should be adjusted because we're taking averages of, and he goes, it's t-ball, but it gets to be so competitive, and I think that what happens, it's not that the parents and dads, they want the best for their kids, everybody does,
Sure, right.
But what they really are looking at is my son or daughter are the best. They're the best athlete. They're the best piano player. They're the best skateboarder. They're the best in school. Yeah. But yet, everybody's going to get a trophy. That's the problem. So every little kid thinks that everything's fine. And sport...
So you're not all for participation trophies?
I'm not for that. I'm really for having a good time at the event.
Got it.
Having a good social. Kids play because they want to have fun, and also they want to socialize.
Yeah.
And they want to feel worthy. Feeling worthy means that you're part of the group.
Yep.
And
giving high fives. It's all that kind of stuff.
For sure.
Yeah.
And you see, I think in our society, even if you look at pro sports, everybody looks in the United States, we really want to know who's the winner. There's like this old, Hagar was a cartoon, and Hagar comes home and he's playing racquetball, and his wife said, did you win or lose? And he goes, well, it's not important who wins or loses. She goes, oh, you lost. So the whole point, though, is that as you get older and as you do have structured play, adult play, whether it be in clubs and then high school and college, winning becomes important. You keep score, that there's a winner and loser. But at
that young age,
And at the young age, I think it's inconsequential, particularly in young 5, 6, 7-year-olds, that really who's going to win is who's physically developed at that age.
Right.
They're going to be quick. So in soccer, they're going to get the ball and they're going to score. Yeah. That doesn't mean anything as you grow up.
So the competitiveness, I know, let's give soccer because it's a very common sport. The age you're starting to see them at 7, 8, get into more competitive teams where they are traveling, they're chosen, if you will. There's that aspect, or even I swam as a child. I was a competitive swimmer at age 5.
Right.
I would go to swim meets, and I look back, I probably wouldn't do that again. or I'm not doing it for my kids.
But did you do that? The question would be, Jason, did you do that because you wanted to do it, or because
it was what our family did?
Family did. Okay.
Yeah. I at the time, I think enjoyed it.
Right.
But I recalled really being into winning and being upset when I didn't win.
Right.
And, it was very competitive at that age even.
Well, I'll give you an example. I remember distinctly, both my kids played surf soccer, and that's a great club here in this area. And my son's team won the state cup, state championship several times. But I remember when they were 11 years old, distinctly have this memory. They were undefeated, and they were at a tournament, and they lost. And one of the fathers in the parking lot, and he's talking to his son, and he said, Philip, they're going to collect a silver medal. Our family does only collects gold medals. I'm saying this guy is, Philip within 2 years quit soccer.
Oh,
because
sure,
dad was, that same dad, I remember picking my son up about a month later in practice, and his name was Peter, filming practice, videotaping practice, and the kids are practicing goal kicks and the balls are really coming close to Peter. And so my son gets in the car and I go, "Hey, Mark, what is that all about?" He says, "Could you believe Philip's dad? We were taking bets on who could hit him with the ball." So, I mean, the kids kind of know. They know, but it's also, you could really get out of control at a younger age. And I think it really takes a good coach and a good club to understand when should you travel and compete, when is winning only important. And we can talk all day about clubs, both in soccer and volleyball, softball are all club oriented. And I think what's happened though, in the high school setting, you had many more coaches that were teachers. So they were involved in child development. They knew what appropriate behavior modification tactics, punishment, non-punishment, verbal feedback. They're teachers.
Yeah, most of the coaches in my high school were teachers.
Yeah,
Actually, taught English or some.
So a lot of them are teachers first, coach second.
Exactly. So what happens in club? A lot of those people aren't teachers.
Right.
They're there in the club because they were a good player. They're there because they're making money in the club. So they just want the best kids. So I don't think skills are taught well. They just want to win.
Right.
So that's a whole different matter. If you get good players, you're going to win. But are those players the best that they can be?
Got it.
And so that's where, I think there's several little paths we're following here. Is one, there's an overemphasis on winning at a young age. Second, there's too much of everybody's a winner no matter if you win or lose. And then there's also the uncontrollable parents that I did that once. I videotaped the parents on the sideline. And then I showed that to them. And I said, here's prominent physicians, professional people, both mom and dads. I'm saying, look at this.
Crazy people.
I mean, hey.
It's amazing how it gets people riled up.
My son, this is a great example of club versus high school. So when my son was playing in high school at La Jolla Country Day, I said, "So Mark, you really like high school soccer?" He says, "I love it. It's my milieu. It's my friends." But he says, "But Dad, the other thing is, see those bleachers over there? In high school, the crazy parents have to sit in the bleachers. They can't run up and down the sideline." I go, "That's astute, He
recognizes that. That's very interesting. One of the other things you talked about is multiple sports, I think, and some pros and cons of children as they're developing, whether it's good to have them in multiple sports or bad. And sort of, I think as the parent, I would look at this as saying, well, I want them to develop multiple skills. And so, hey, I might have them in swimming, in martial arts, in soccer, in various things. And they may get a little bit of different things from each one of those. But there's a certain point where you might have to focus.
Well, I think, first of all,
don't tell that to Bo Jackson.
Multiple skills are good because you're going to then have a way that you may learn lifelong leisure skills if you do a lot of different sports. The other part is that you're not going to overuse one part of your body. You're cross-training if you're doing other sports. And I think probably the way we grew up, we'd say, hey, it's baseball season, then it's football season, then it's, summer.
But now they're all year round.
Oh my gosh, they're all year round. And see, I think that I'd say this. I feel it's very important to do an individual sport and a team sport.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
Because then you're learning how to deal with a group. And there's nothing better than winning as a team, losing as a team. There's a support base. Winning together is great. But individually, you also know it's up to me.
Right.
And then the other part, there's good, especially the individual sports, whether it be even, running, swimming, tennis, golf, those are great lifelong leisure sports.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And our society, look, the most important sport in this country, not even close, is football. And it goes from the top down.
From a financial standpoint.
Well, financial and anywhere it's popular.
Watched,
the most watched television and most sponsors go after it and so forth. But it's a tough sport to play beyond a high school or a college setting. Nobody plays football at age 30. And same thing, basketball or even competitive soccer are very difficult to play because they're so taxing on your body.
Right.
And
Versus you're saying the other one's golf, tennis, swimming.
Yeah,
you can play those leisurely. Yeah.
Certainly. I mean, look, I still say that the most gifted athletes may be the men's tennis players for the amount of hours it takes to win a match, and at the high level that they're playing for 3.5 to 5 hours.
Right.
Oh my gosh, But that's not good for your body either. Anybody that plays at a high level, once you get to college or beyond, sport is deleterious to your health. It's tough on your joints. It's tough on your back, knees, hips.
Yeah, I mean, I played volleyball in college as well, and almost everybody had some sort of ice on them
All
after
the time.
practice,
And then
like knees, shoulders, foot, every single person. It was just that's. Just
I think I was mentioning to both of you. I just came back from my 42nd year reunion of my 1975 men's team, and everybody's fairly healthy, but there's a lot of hobbling around. I mean, knees and hips, and
totally,
it's a tough sport on joints.
Yeah, for sure.
So you mentioned, even just playing at the high level, it's, your body and such, but there was some interesting stats that you had brought about competing at a high level. Maybe you can share some of that.
Sure.
So few people will actually make it.
Well, out of all the youth sports, if you take all the youth sport athletes in every sport combined, only 3% will play in college. Only 1% will have a scholarship. So all the parents that think that these kids that are playing
get their education paid for,
I say buy zero coupon municipal bonds, or get into the programs where you can put away your money tax-free to have your kids get an education. And I mean, there's other positives.
1% gets a scholarship.
Scholarship, correct. And really, the sport that has the most chance of getting a scholarship is women's rowing, which is out of, if you look at the percentages, and certainly that's not the only reason why anyone should play sport, because you should play sport because it's enjoyable. You're learning skills, you're socializing, and I think there's a lot of pressure put on kids to think that, hey, because we're spending money to play club, whatever, I then am going to get that money repaid when I'm going to be a college athlete. And boy, there's a lot of pressure on kids.
Well, you said so. Even 1% gets a scholarship, and then what's the percentage of that actually goes to professional?
0.1%. So, I mean, you're talking. I think it's 1 out of every 15,000. Is it basketball players
that plays? You're talking about the percentage of people who actually play.
Correct.
That percent then go. Oh wow.
Correct. I mean, it's infinitesimal because, and part of the other issue. Look, people can get hurt, so you could be one knee away from obscurity if you put all that into playing. I really had a great relationship when I was at Oregon State with Mike Riley, who was the football coach there at that time, and now he's the head coach at Nebraska. And what Mike did in recruiting young men, he'd say, "Look, I was the head coach in the NFL. I can get you to the NFL." And he was a great coach, but then as soon as you got there, he said, "Hey, you're not going to get into the NFL. You got to get your degree." So because he also knew the percentages.
Right.
And it's not like, like people will watch Kentucky basketball with Calipari and one and done, but those are genetic freaks. Those are, and those people should be one and done. If I could make $35 million by being a first-round draft choice.
Sure.
Hey, come on.
Go get your education afterwards.
Exactly. So, but I think that is, when people will look at sport in general and they'll say, well, my daughter could be like Mia Hamm, or my son can be like LeBron James, or gee, my son's going to be like Roger Federer. Hey, they're.
How do you know?
Well,
you have you seen? I mean, you've been up. You see a kid that all of a sudden really stands out.
Yeah, but I think you have to have several things. One, genetics. The other,
they're self-driven.
Self-driven, for sure. Intrinsic motivation.
Yeah.
The other is a great attitude, work ethic, and effort. If you look at the top of all, whether it be take a Tom Brady. He's not the fastest. He's not the quickest. He has tremendous work ethic and reliability. But once you get someone that is genetically gifted, like a LeBron or Michael Jordan, and you have work ethic, effort, unstoppable. Yeah. Serena Williams. Those are, and part of it is, when people look at young kids that are ages 4 to 7, you can't project how much they're going to grow, or also there's no algorithm to measure work ethic, attitude, and effort.
Absolutely.
And that's what I think is the differentiator. There's a lot of great athletes. What's the name of the receiver for New England? Edelman. Compare him to all the great receivers that New England may have had that were 2 or 3 times more gifted than he is, but how many Super Bowls has he won?
Right.
And those are, I think, you've got to be careful, because if you only look at the kid that is fast, quick, sometimes those kids also don't have
burnout.
They have a burnout, and also they don't work hard because it's always been easy. It's always been easy. I saw when you get to the national team, hey, I coached, when you really think about it, in volleyball, I had 18 athletes. All of them were 3 or 4 time All-Americans. My team was a lot difficult to coach than an NBA team, because in the NBA, you have all the talent dissipated among 30 teams. I have 18 of the best. They all were the superstar of their college. Right. How do you subjugate them to a different role? Or how do you make them, again, go back to feel worthy? And hey, the hardest thing is self-confidence in sport. And to be great, you got to get people out of their comfort zone. So that in any profession, all of us have gone through a different job or whatever, and you go, I don't know if I can do this. Well, hey, you got to get out of your comfort zone in order to do anything well.
Difference is there's not a million something people watching on TV.
No, exactly. and that's the thing that people don't realize about age group sport, or even high school or college. There's a lot of emotion that you bear in front of friends, family, people, college, or hey, how many people are watching a game, and the fans.
Absolutely.
Fan comes from fanatic. These are people that are they live or die. I mean, the Cubs lost 3 games to the Yankees. Oh my gosh, 18 innings last night. That's my gosh, So you gotta, but you can't take that down to the kids.
Right.
That's the issue I see.
No, I gotcha. And then one of the other things you talked about was recruiting. You talk about recruiting, the process of getting into college sports. So maybe just a tip or two for kids that, or parents that have, for the dads that have high school sport kids. Their children play high school sports and they're good. And are there some things and some ways to sort of set it up so that they can be
I think there's 2 things that come to mind right away. Send them to a sport camp at the college that they're interested in.
Okay.
Because then they get a chance to see the college. If they're good, they're going to get coached by the coaches at that school. That's a
what
good
age
one.
does that? As a freshman, can you go?
Yeah, you can go as a freshman, 8th grader. I think those are the good times to go, because you start 8th grade, freshman year, sophomore year, good times.
If you're good.
Yeah, but a lot of kids can go and have a good time at a camp too. The other thing is be proactive. So you, as the young potential student athlete, should reach out, email coaches, do your homework on the internet, looking at schools.
It's not having your parents do it, it's doing it directly.
Don't, because I think to me, I really liked when a young person reached out to me, because even though it's awkward for them, but it's a good way for them to start interacting with adults. And it's a good way for them to take ownership of what their interests are. And I think that parents are going to have for sure a say, but if parents want to guide their kids, I always say that, to me, parenthood is, there's a great statement in the Prophet, Kahil Gibran said, children are like they're arrows, and you're the archer, and you're going to point the arrow to the mark, but then you have to let it go. And I think that's what I've learned a long time ago. One of my dear friends was an eminent psychologist, and when my son turned 13, he said, strap yourself in for a ride of your life for 8 to 10 years, and then they're going to come back to their core values. And that's very true, but they have to have core values.
Right.
If you don't have core values, what are you going to come back to?
Right.
And I think
which is the whole thing we're doing here.
I think that's the whole thing about parenting, because it's parenting is not easy, and it's every child is different. And I think it's a matter of understanding that they have to do as they want, what they enjoy. And if you can teach them good attitude, work ethic, critical. You know, my dad had this statement that always reverberated in my mind. You know, he says, you know, this is a great country. If you work hard, anything is possible. But understand, you may work hard and you may not get what you want, but you will never get what you want if you don't work hard. Right. And that stayed with me forever. And I think that's what you can impart in your kids about, not only following the golden rule, but also being tolerant, caring about the people around you. And I think these young kids today really care about each other, care about the world, but also I think they need to learn how to work hard and not to have everything given to them, because a lot of them have been enabled.
Yeah.
And the parents,
have a sense of entitlement.
Yeah. And hey, I deserve that because I got a trophy. Well, you're not going to get a trophy right now.
No, that's very, very true. So I want to kind of summarize, if you will. We put together 5 tips to be an effective sports parent. So kind of wrapping all this stuff up. So the first one you had mentioned was it's really about them.
It's about them. It's about what they, you want to put them in a safe environment. You want to put them in an environment where they're going to have a good teacher, coach that's going to really understand points 2 and 3. That person needs to know that, hey, these kids need to have fun.
Right.
Kids quit sport because they don't have fun.
Right.
Okay. And then the next thing, point 3, is you need to learn skill. Anything of value in sport begins with the skills of that sport. Take volleyball. You've got to hit the ball, block the ball, dig the ball, pass the ball, set the ball, and hit the ball. So those are the 6 skills. If you're playing football, you've got to block, you've got to tackle, you've got to run.
Right.
Basketball, you've got to shoot, you've got to rebound, you've got to block out, you got to handle the ball, pass, and dribble. So you got to learn those things, because as you get better and as you get more physically adept and grow or get stronger, hey, you still have to have the skills.
Right.
Good skills.
You start to specialize a little bit more, I guess.
Yeah, but you still have to have, the skills. And so those are the first 3. It's about them, fun. Make sure it's fun. Number 3, make sure you're learning skills.
Right. Okay. And then the fourth thing you had mentioned was supporting them, and maybe I think you used the term unconditional. So, unconditional love. No matter, kids are going to learn through sometimes failure or sometimes through doing the wrong thing. And I think you just need to make sure they're accountable. You want to support them. You're going to give them unconditional love. But at the same time, you've got to make them accountable. Yeah. You can't let them just get away with things because, hey, I'll take care of that. Or, gee, I'll go see the principal, or I'll go see the coach. Or natural consequences.
Natural consequences is actually good, because it's that needs to be your motivator. You've got to get above that. So,
and then the reality, the last point is, I think you called it the 1%.
The 1% and the 0.1%, and it is I think, Jason, what you mentioned right now is reality. Is that, look, I remember seeing a mom at an early age, and my daughter was about 7 or 8, and the mom, kind of in earshot of everybody, says to her daughter, "You're going to be the next Mia Hamm." Does the mom even know what that means? Right. Mia Hamm's one of a million, so what kind of pressure are you putting on your daughter? Or that's an expectancy that's
it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. I mean, it happens very rarely, and it takes serendipity. It takes take one of the greatest tennis player of all time, Roger Federer. One of the great things about Roger, he enjoys playing, but the other, he's very, very rarely been hurt. Only in the last year and a half has he been hurt at age 33. Right. But, a lot of things may happen to you in your career. So that 1% that will get a scholarship, there's only 1%, and only 0.1% of all those playing that sport are going to get to the next level. So that's crazy. When you think about those numbers, like how few people, and the aspiration that everyone thinks that they can get there. There might be some value in the aspiration or the desire or the goal, but ultimately, it's easier to be a neurosurgeon statistically.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
You get paid about the same, right?
Paid about the same, but you may have a longer career as a surgeon.
Less traumatic head disorders.
Yeah. So where do people find what you're doing? I guess the Art of Coaching Volleyball.
Art of Coaching. Well, we've started with the Art of Coaching Volleyball. So if you go to the artofcoachingvolleyball.com, you'll get to our volleyball site. If you go to the artofcoachingsoftball.com, you'll get to our softball site. Where right now there's still not completely ready. Baseball and football are the next launches that we're going to have. And ultimately, we really want to do a general site called The Art of Coaching. We've also done, and I'm going to give you a copy of that to both of you, we've got a little course for parents.
Oh, good.
And
Okay.
it's a 20-minute course, and it also has anything from animations to like the do's and the don'ts.
Oh, no, that's great.
So we'll send that to you because it's we want to get that out to parents, and we want to get that out to clubs and high schools to be able to say,
that's great information.
Hey, take a look at this because you'll be a better sport parent if you go through that.
No, for sure. I appreciate that. Alan, anything?
No, I mean,
it's pretty thorough.
Absorbing all the information. I had some questions, but you answered them before I even thought of it. So I'm like,
it's interesting because we think about the sports aspect of it, but how much of it is emotional intelligence, psychology. I mean, I would imagine, especially in your collegiate coaching and the national, how much of your time was actually spent off the court or not touching the ball or not dealing with the X and O's, if you will.
Well, for sure, because it's, again, back to it's a team, it's relationship based, it's a team culture. Yeah. How do you develop a culture? It's role definition, it's communication, it's really making sure that you're giving them the best shot that they can have. And, I've not always been right, but I think for the most part I have been, because it's going to take care of itself as to who rises to the top.
That's great.
And then you've got to let, hey, my daughter was the captain of the soccer team in Wisconsin. My son started playing soccer at the University of Chicago, and then he didn't want to play. And then the coach calls me, and I'm going, hey, why are you calling me? And he says, well, your son's really good. He's going to be a starting central midfielder. I'm saying, hey, he doesn't want to play. But 5 years later, I remember being in Chicago, and Mark's working now for U.S. Soccer. He says, Dad, come watch me play. And I go see him play, just an outdoor game in a league. And I mean, really good team, and he has fun. And he comes off and he says, Dad, I play soccer to have fun. I hate practice.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so you got to just know where you're at. And I think that's what it's important. About. Yeah.
No, that's great. So with that, Alan, Terry, thank you very much for
my pleasure.
Coming
here. A lot of great info.
If you guys have any questions or so, Alan, where can people find us?
Go to podcast@dudesadads.com if you want to email us, and then our social media channels: Facebook, dudesadads.com, Twitter @dudesadads. You can go to YouTube, Stitcher, and iTunes and look for Dudes to Dads, and please subscribe to all three if you can.
Leave a lot of stuff they got to do.
Yeah, you got to be dedicated. You got to have that value there. Exactly. But yeah, all three of those channels, please, if you do iTunes and Stitcher, please leave a review. It actually helps the ratings of the show.
Awesome. All right. With that, we'll see you next week.
See you next week.